This is the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze for ReadyForTheDraft.com. Week 5 of the college football season in the books. I'll tell you what, the draft eligible prospect for the 2020 NFL Draft have their fingerprints all over the college football landscape. If you're talking about the Heisman Trophy favorites, how about Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama? The precision with the way that he throws. You know, the ball placement, the anticipation. He's like a surgeon back there just carving up defenses. How about Jalen Hurts? Is OU going to have their third straight Heisman Trophy winner? I mean, he's making a good case for that right now. Another dominant performance against Texas Tech. We'll talk about him in a moment. You know, can his game really translate to the next level? That remains to be seen. One guy who I definitely can see, his game translating to the next level is Joe Burrow out of LSU. Joe Brady took the passing game from the New Orleans Saints, brought it to Baton Rouge. So if you're looking at, a quarterback and can you see his game translate to the next level, Joe Burrow's running an offense that's similar to the New Orleans Saints. If I'm the Saints and I'm not sold on Teddy Bridgewater as the heir apparent to Drew Brees, Joe Burrow might be the guy. I may do everything I can to get Joe Burrow, who is making a case to be the number 3 quarterback taken. He'll be battling Jake Fromm of Georgia to see if he can get that done behind Tua and Justin Herbert of Oregon. I think he's making himself a definite case there. Those are 3 out of the top 4 quarterbacks battling for that Heisman Trophy, along with Justin Fields of Ohio State, who's not draft eligible. But I'll tell you what, he's the big reason why Ohio State has been dominant and possibly the best team to this point in the season. No offense to Alabama, but I think Ohio State may be the best team in terms of performance so far in 2019. If you move to the running game, Chuba Hubbard, 938 yards on the ground through 5 games. We're not even into October in terms of the Pokes games, and he's already over 900 yards on the ground. Staggering numbers. He's a redshirt sophomore, so there's a chance that Chuba Hubbard could enter the draft. Now, when you talk about J.K. Dobbins, number 2 in the country in rushing at 654 yards, he's making a case to be a top 5 running back. I think he's really solidified himself as being able to do that. A.J. Dillon finally healthy, big 6 foot, 245 pound running back. They say he has 4.5 speed. Hasn't really been able to show it. A season ago with that ankle injury, high ankle sprain that he was battling. He's over 600 yards there for Boston College, finally healthy. So those are guys that are starting to make a name there at the running back position. Obviously, there's DeAndre Swift. He's doing everything. He's sharing the backfield. So when you talk about numbers, you're not going to see his name jump up, but he's going to definitely be in consideration there for a potential first-round pick, as will Jonathan Taylor. My number 1 running back there for Wisconsin, just 559 yards, on the season so far for Taylor, who really, hasn't had to play much past the second quarter for Wisconsin and has been dominant. And as we get in further and further into Big Ten play, just expect him to continue to carry the load a lot more there for Wisconsin. They're going to need to get the passing game stepped up, especially with Quintez Cephas back in a Badger uniform. But I still think, your bell cow there is going to be Jonathan Taylor, and he's added the dimension of being able to catch the football out of the backfield. He's clearly, to me, the 2018 Doak Walker Award winner. He'll have to battle Chuba Hubbard for the 2019 crown, but he'll definitely, to me, I think there's no doubt that he's going to be the number 1 running back taken in the 2020 draft, should he come out. Now, the wide receiver position, there are 5, 6, 7 wideouts in this draft class who, had they entered the 2019 draft, could have made a case to be the number 1 wideout taken. Obviously, there's Jerry Jeudy, not only a guy who has the vertical speed, but so sudden in and out of his breaks. He's a special receiver, and I can see him being a top 5 pick. First Bama wide receiver to do that since Julio Jones. CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. I mentioned a week ago that he may not be in my top 3 or 4. Come on. Then he goes out against Texas Tech, has a monster game, reminds everybody why he is a dominant wideout. Henry Ruggs III out of Alabama reminds me a lot of Hollywood Brown. Speed kills. Hollywood Brown came out very first week of the season for the Ravens, 154 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. And he was the number 1 wideout taken. Henry Ruggs with that speed, had it not been for Jerry Jeudy, you can make a case that Henry Ruggs would be the number 1 wideout taken in 2020. The vertical speed, I'll be interested to see what he runs in the 40. Tylan Wallace, right now is the number 3 wideout in terms of receiving yards in the country. He's over 600 yards already, 618 yards to be exact, on just 28 receptions, 6 touchdowns. He's making a big case to be the Biletnikoff winner. He was a Biletnikoff Award finalist a season ago, lost out to Jerry Jeudy, but I'll tell you what, Tylan Wallace, people didn't really know who he was a season ago. Everyone knows who he is now. T. Higgins, a big wideout on the outside there for Clemson. And then Laviska Shenault. This is a guy, runs a lot of underneath routes, doesn't always, if you look at the yards per catch, it's under 14 for the season, but he's big, he's physical, he can make plays after the catch. Reminds me a lot of Juju Smith-Schuster. Don't sleep on Laviska Shenault. He should be a first-round pick. Look, Juju Smith-Schuster fell to the second round, and we see what he's been able to do there for the Steelers to this point in his career. If you flip to the defensive side of the football, Chase Young, beast. That's all you have to say. 6'5", 265, just looks chiseled, and he's virtually unblockable. When I talk about guys that should be drafted in the top 5, they're guys I have to know where they are on the field on any given play and every play, because if not, he's gonna burn me. And Chase Young's able to do that coming off the edge for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Just so explosive, powerful, excellent hand usage. And he's the next one. We had Joey Bosa go number 3 overall. We had Nick Bosa go number 2 overall. Could Chase Young potentially be the number 1 overall pick? He'll battle Tua Tagovailoa for that crown. I can guarantee you that. When we talk about Ohio State, Jeffrey Okudah, number 1 corner. Hasn't had any interceptions in his career, and that was one of the concerns that I had, was can he really make the plays when it counts? And in the last 2 weeks, 3 interceptions. He solidified himself as the number 1 corner and could go down as a potentially a better prospect than Denzel Ward, if you could imagine that. Sticking to the defensive end position, Yetur Gross-Matos has shown an ability to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. I want to see him get after the quarterback a little bit more. I'm also waiting for A.J. Epinesa to really have a breakout game. I haven't seen a whole lot of that from him just yet, along with Alton Robinson of Syracuse. But Kenny Willick is playing with like a man with his hair on fire, and Curtis Weaver, always in opposing backfields there for Boise State. He's a guy to watch. I think he's making a name for himself and should be considered as a first rounder. Bradley Anae out of Utah, over 20 career sacks to his credit. He's somebody who I think is flying under people's radar. And again, when you talk about top 5 draft picks, I think when you look at Tua and Jerry, really you're looking at two programs for 4 out of the 5. Tua and Jerry Jeudy, I think, are 2 of your top 5 players. Your other 2 come from Ohio State on the defensive side of the football with Chase Young and Jeffrey Okudah. Who's number 5? It could be Grant Delpit out of LSU, following the footsteps of Jamal Adams, but he's been battling some injuries, a little bit of inconsistency. So if his draft stock falls, then defensive tackle position, how about Derrick Brown? That guy's been a beast. You look at him, the speed to power, very quick off the ball, can collapse the pocket from within. Also a mean run stuffer, gets quick penetration. He's somebody that you have to account for on every given play. But he's not the only guy at the defensive tackle position. How about Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina, solidifying himself as a legit first-round prospect. 6'6", 310 pounds, excellent length, good speed coming off the ball. He can collapse the pocket from within. And I'll tell you what, Raekwon Williams of Michigan State and Leki Fotu of Utah have started to really showcase more of their athleticism and the ability to not only be run defenders, but they can also get after the passer. And that's something that I was waiting to see. I hadn't seen it from them. And that's really something that they're showcasing. But how about Florida State's Marvin Wilson? 6'5", 311 pounds. This is a guy who, a season ago in 12 games, 41 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks in just 5 games this year. Already 23 tackles, 3 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss. He's somebody who I think is elevating his game, and he's somebody who's basically solidifying himself as a first rounder as well. At the outside linebacker position, how about Isaiah Simmons? This is a guy who was a safety, bulked up. He's now 6'4", 230 pounds, and he's that new age linebacker, a guy who can absolutely drop into coverage. And, he has exceptional length, long arms that get into the passing lane. He has a sideline to sideline range, can play in the box, get after the quarterback, blitzing. He'll be a guy who can be mentioned in the top half of the first round. I think linebackers outside, Julian Okwara as a rush outside linebacker, Anthony Jennings, another guy. Don't sleep on Charles Snowden out of Virginia. I think he's somebody who could be climbing up some draft boards as well. Inside linebacker, how about Evan Weaver, the tackling machine? 159 tackles a season ago. May not be the best athlete at 6'3", 235 pounds, but I'll tell you what, there may not be a more instinctive linebacker. He just knows where to be, where to make plays, diagnoses the plays so quickly, and he's there. But I'll tell you what, I watch him drop into coverage, and he makes plays against the pass. And I didn't think that he was going to be able to do that. I think he's proving that he can be a 3-down linebacker. And I'll tell you what, there are 2 other guys in the Big Ten that are doing that as well. Joe Bocci of Michigan State, Patty Fisher of Northwestern. They're showing that they can drop into coverage, and that's really what you need out of your inside linebackers. Can they show that they can be 3-down linebackers? You don't have to pull them off the field on third downs. And those are guys that are definitely making a name for themselves. I mentioned Jeffrey Okudah as the number 1 cornerback. I think there's no doubt about that. Bryce Hall should be mentioned in there. 38 pass breakups in his career. He had a chance to be the number 1 corner taken in the 2019 draft. I think he'll be right there with Jeffrey Okudah. And then Kristian Fulton out of LSU, 5'10", 199-pound junior. He's going to battle Okudah and Hall there for the top billing there at corner. And then if you've listened to my podcast in the past, Paulson Adebo, I've been high on him. The former 4-star wideout, really showing a knack for understanding and recognizing routes, and really a lot of times running the routes better than the receivers. But he's been beaten a little bit, been taken advantage of. Some soft coverage at times, and really teams taking advantage of his aggressive play. Falling victim to quite a few double moves. His draft stock kind of sliding down just a little bit. CJ Henderson of Florida has been injured. So a guy like Jeff Gladney moving up some draft boards. We'll talk about his play here in just a minute. And then how about Trevon Diggs out of Alabama, the converted wideout, 6'2" corner, and I think he's proving that there's a good chance that he could be a first-round corner. And when you're looking at the cornerback position, I think Okudah, Fulton, Hall, Diggs, definitely first-rounders. Adebo needs to have better consistency, show not be so aggressive. But the ball skills, you can't really teach that. The instincts there. So Adebo could be right there as well. And then at the safety position, Grant Delpit, number 1 safety, can do everything. But Xavier McKinney is right on his heels. He's really knocking on the doorstep, and somebody who can play over the top, against the pass, can cover a little bit in the slot, and plays well in the box against the run. I think he's showing the leadership there in the secondary for the Crimson Tide, and he's a legitimate first-round prospect at the safety position. One other name to mention who I think is going to be outside the first round, but somebody who's going to be a second-round pick will be Brandon Jones out of Texas. Really elevated his game, 6'2", 205, and he's shown an ability to get after the quarterback a little bit. Can play over the top, play in the box, showing an ability to cover. And he's really had to take on a leadership role, especially now that there are all the injuries that the Longhorns have been facing in the secondary. Caden Stern's going down, and if they're going to rebound, if the Longhorns are really going to rebound with all those injuries, Brandon Jones is going to play a big part. Somebody to keep an eye out. Definitely Brandon Jones there for the Longhorns. So week 5. I'm up to, I don't know how this is possible, but through week 5, I've watched And if you haven't listened to a podcast before, I'll explain briefly. My goal at the end of the season is to make sure that I've watched at least one game beginning to end for all 130 FBS programs, and obviously sprinkle in some of the FCS programs as well. I'm at 97 so far, so I'm making pretty good progress. I got 33 teams left to watch. So we'll take a look at some of the games that I got to watch here in week 5, September 27th and 28th. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the matchups here for week number 6. First game that I got to watch, was San Jose State and Air Force. San Jose State went down to the Falcons 41-24. But I'll tell you what, Josh Love is a guy I think could be a potential developmental quarterback. He's battling battled injuries in the past. But he was 19 of 35, 198 yards. But I'll tell you what, he was on his back more than he was taking hits, not just on his back. I mean, he was really just taking a lot of hits right in his face. Receivers dropping some passes as well, not really helping him out. But this is a kid, he is tough. I will tell you, he would stand in there, take a big hit, deliver a strike. And I think that's what is so impressive, is his ability to stand tall in the pocket, survey the field, get rid of the football despite the pocket collapsing around him. Ball really jumps off his hand really well. I thought he showcased a pretty quick release. And look, the Spartans this year, they beat Arkansas, and he was a big reason why. And, Josh Love, like I said, he's not going to be a guy who's going to get drafted, more than likely going to be an undrafted free agent, but somebody who I think could be a developmental prospect. Ethan Aguayo, I thought was an interesting story. 6'2", 220-pounder. He was a former walk-on long snapper and is now the number 2 tackler in all of FBS. 253 career tackles, moved from safety to linebacker in 2017 with, he's a little undersized at the linebacker position, struggles to get off blocks, but he's a volume tackler and, somebody who I think will get a look as a potential late day 3 prospect. Penn State murdered Maryland in College Park, 59-0. In that game, got to watch Yetur Gross-Matos, 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He's somebody who lives in opposing backfields, but I'm still waiting for him to really have a breakout game getting after the quarterback. That's one of the things that I just haven't seen yet from him. And, I'm waiting for him to really go off and have a big day rushing the quarterback. Didn't really see a ton of that out of him in that game. Cal taking on Arizona State, the Sun Devils taking down the number 15th ranked Cal Bears in Berkeley, 24-17. Herm Edwards and company getting the job done there. But I spoke of Evan Weaver, 15 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. So instinctive. And ability to play sideline to sideline. I think that's one of the things that jumps off the film when you watch him play. And, in that game as well, a sophomore by the name of Merlin Robertson, number 8, 11 tackles, half a sack in that game. He's another guy who is a difference maker, a guy who plays downhill, sideline to sideline ability. Really want to see him, drop into coverage a little bit more. Is he going to be a guy who's going to be a 3-down player? But, so instinctive and a really good athlete. I believe he was the Pac-12 freshman of the year on defense a season ago, and he's picking up right where he left off. Now, Wisconsin, the Badgers, at home against Northwestern, struggled a little bit in this game, but the number 8 Badgers, 24-15 winners. Jonathan Taylor, 26 carries, 119 yards and a touchdown, also 3 receptions as well. Like I said, he's really adding the ability to catch the football out of the backfield to his repertoire, also showing he can block as well. But in the passing game, an angle route over the middle, caught the ball away from his body, secured it, got upfield. That's something that I think you really, I want to see more of that from him. And he wasn't my number 1 running back to start the season because, frankly, he was somebody who we didn't see catch the football out of the backfield very often. A big reason why Melvin Gordon was not taken ahead of Todd Gurley was because he wasn't the pass catcher that Todd Gurley was coming out of Georgia. Jonathan Taylor is proving that he's really worked on that. In at 5'11", 219 pounds, he runs with power. but he also has 400 meter speed. So, the explosiveness is obviously there as well. But I think maybe his best attribute is the patience and the vision. So patient to wait for his blockers, and then the vision to see the cutback lanes, and there's no wasted movement. Once he sees that cutback lane, foot in the ground, and he's going. He's getting north and south, and the lateral agility, his ability to make those jump cuts. They're more of a slashing style, so he's making those cuts down the field without losing speed, and I think that's one of the things that kind of sets him apart as one of the best, if not the best, running back in all of college football. Tyler Biadasz, his center, 6'3", 321-pound junior, 31 starts to his credit. He's going to be a top 20 pick when it's all said and done. He's somebody who I think, the intelligence, the football IQ is there. He's the guy that really calls all the protections there up front for the Badgers. He plays with excellent leverage. I think that's one of the things you see him controlling the defensive tackles, the leverage and the hand placement, keeping the hands inside, right on the chest plate, and just controlling his man, but the athleticism as well. You see him pulling, getting out, climbing to the second level, showed really good pop too. He really drove into Blake Gallagher, the linebacker, and drove him down the field, but it was that pop. You just really heard that pop getting into those pads and really driving him through. So Tyler Biadasz, to me, number one center and somebody who's going to be a first-round pick. Two linebackers definitely made a name for themselves in that game. Zach Bond of Wisconsin, 6'3", 235 pounds, 7 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hurries. This is a guy, I mentioned guys, playing with their hair on fire. This is somebody who's flying around to the football. On one play, rushing the quarterback, stutter to the outside, shooting inside, taking advantage of the right tackle, Gunnar Vogel, oversetting and getting into the quarterback, hitting the quarterback as he throws, which ultimately forced a pass breakup by the defensive end, Isaiah Loudermilk. On another play, he's able to dip the inside shoulder, coming off the edge and getting to the quarterback that way. So very versatile in his ability to get after the passer. Zach Bond, underrated in my opinion, coming out of Wisconsin. He's the next guy. Joe Schobert, T.J. Watt, Garrett Donnelly. A lot of these guys coming out of Wisconsin, and Zach Bond's going to be the next guy. Vince Beagle. A lot of guys in the NFL that are played linebacker at Wisconsin, and Zach Bond is one of those guys who is showing he can get to the quarterback with frequency. And then Patty Fisher, Northwestern's inside linebacker, back-to-back 120-plus tackle seasons, 6'4", 246 pounds. And I'll tell you what, the football instinct's absolutely there. You see him playing sideline to sideline, a guy who can come downhill and really be a thumper, very reliable open field tackler as well. But I'll tell you what, I thought, I saw decent feet, decent hips and coverage. And that was something for a guy who's 6'4", that's rare. You don't see that all that often. And you need to have that from your inside linebacker. Can he be a 3-down linebacker? And I think Patty Fisher can absolutely do that. He proved that in that game. Cole Van Lanen, the left tackle for Wisconsin, 6'5", 312-pound junior, just 5 starts to his credit. But a lot of people were expecting him to be a breakout offensive tackle, potentially a top 10 tackle for the 2020 draft. But I thought there was some inconsistency. I thought he was somebody who struggled a little bit with speed rushers, was also driven back, with a high pad level, driven back into the quarterback by Sam Miller. And he a lot of times dealing with the speed rushers, having to recover, try to take the defensive end up the field and away from the pocket. Did show that he has some good athleticism in the running game, came around to pull, got under Blake Gallagher. It seemed like Blake Gallagher was just getting, running into offensive linemen left and right at the second level, but got underneath this pad level, really sealed him off to open up a big hole there for Jonathan Taylor. And then Joe Gaziano, Joey Gaz, as I like to call him, 3 tackles and a forced fumble. He reminds me a lot of Dean Lowry for the Packers, who just got signed a nice little deal there with Green Bay. 6'4", 275 pounds, and excellent length. He's a guy who can get after the quarterback a little bit, and I think he'll be an early day 3 pick and a guy who's going to play in the NFL for a long time. TCU took on Kansas at home. The Mad Hatter heading into Amon G. Carter Stadium. TCU gets the win 51-14. And I'll tell you what, you got to watch Jalen Reagor. Only one reception for 15 yards, but had a 73-yard punt return that he took back to the house. And what you see there is the suddenness and as I lose my mic here, you see the suddenness. And that's one of the things that is so special about him. So sudden, the cutback ability, the vision as a runner. And he takes that in his ability to make plays in the open field after the catch. And the route running as well. When you talk about the suddenness, ran a sluggo, this double move, cornerback really bit on the route, and ultimately had the corner turn around and really had no idea where he was. And quarterback ultimately, had a throw that was way too far inside and was short, but tremendous route running ability there from Jalen Reagor. He's somebody who has a chance to be a first rounder, possibly top of round number 2 when it's all said and done. Underrated running back. A guy who I think could potentially crack into that second tier of running backs is Darius Anderson, there for TCU. 5'11", 212-pound senior. Last 2 weeks, 340 rush yards, 4th in the FBS. He's kind of a one-cut-and-go type of guy. Shoots through the hole. Shows pretty good patience, vision. 18 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. To his credit in that game, he's somebody who just continues to get better each and every week. He and Sewo Olanolua getting a lot of carries there, and that's really been TCU's bread and butter. And if you want to run behind Lucas Niang there on the right side. I'll tell you what, 2 tackles, Niang and Akeem Adeniji, both. Got to watch them play, and I thought they had their good moments, and there's some moments that they need to clean up just a little bit. So for Lucas Niang, 6'7", 328-pound right tackle, this is a guy who I think is a very easy mover, very light on his feet. That's one of the things that you see. He slides well laterally in pass protection. One of the things I thought was so interesting was his first step with this kick slide was parallel to the line before he actually, the kick slide gets any depth. But he covers so much ground because he is such an easy mover that it didn't really hinder him at all. I thought he played, excellent length. It really extends those arms into the defensive end, can bend a little bit and play with leverage. Showed off a quick power step to the inside, able to wall off a defensive end who was trying to take an inside rush, and then was able to loop back around to pick up a linebacker that's rushing off the edge. Ability on reach blocks, doesn't always sustain his blocks a little bit though. And then I thought the footwork was inconsistent at times in pass protection. That's really what got him into trouble, was when the footwork was not up to par. And that's one of the things, an experienced defensive end at the next level is really going to take advantage of that. So he's got to get that footwork cleaned up just a little bit. And then for Adeniji, I've been looking forward to watching him play. And I'll tell you what, can generate some movement in the running game, playing with excellent leverage, getting under the defensive end's pad level, driving him back. Want to see him, the sustainability a little bit. He lets up on his blocks a little bit more than you'd like to see. I think he shows an ability to bend, at the knees, sit down, play with leverage, and anchor in pass protection. One of the things, he's got to be patient. I saw him kind of try to climb out to the defensive end, and what he ended up doing was he was lunging at the end, which ultimately caused him to get beaten, and the defensive end getting into the backfield. But when he's patient, when he's able to move his feet and slide, he can mirror defensive ends, can pick up counter moves easily with his lateral agility. Does a good job beating the defensive end to the edge with taking good angles, deep kick slide as well. Very active hands, just throwing defensive ends, hands around, gets underneath the hand and arm and just kind of throws it aside. Overset, has a tendency to overset though. He'll get a little overzealous and is susceptible to the inside moves because he oversets. And, I think for me, I think he's still a little raw But 6'5", 300 pounds. He's somebody who I think can absolutely. He'll probably be a day 3 pick, but a guy who I think can develop into a starter. In the future at the next level. Oklahoma taking on Texas Tech. The number 6 Sooners, 55-16, had an easy time there in Norman. The Jalen Hurts show was on. 17-24, 415 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and then nine carries on the ground, 70 yards and a touchdown. Look, Jalen Hurts airing the football out. I think that was one of the things that at Alabama we didn't really, you didn't think of him as a passer. And I've heard the comparisons to Lamar Jackson. I don't know that he's quite there yet, in terms of talking about him as a Lamar Jackson type of clone. But I think he does a really good job. There's a post play to Charleston Rambo, who's a good looking sophomore receiver. He's actually a redshirt sophomore, by the way, 6'1", 180 pounds. Could he enter the draft? Maybe, but I think with the depth in this receiving core, I think Charleston Rambo has a chance to be a top wideout in next year's draft. But Hurts going through his progressions quickly, found Rambo on a 48-yard on a post for 48 yards, showed an ability rolling out, getting his eyes down the field, set his feet, fired 40 yards to Rambo on another post pass, across the field. Totaled 78 yards on that play. The ball placement is definitely there, able to put the ball away from the defender to the outside on outbreaking routes. Some subtlety. There's a corner blitz backside, just kind of slid to his right, able to get away from pressure. Very patient too. Waited for CeeDee Lamb to get to an opening over the middle. Fired a strike to him for a 20-yard gain. CD able to get off of that, turned outside, ran away from the defender for a 71-yard touchdown. He's somebody who I think is a grown man. Really. I mean, he's a senior. He's been through a lot, and when you listen to him talk, it's very much the Nick Saban style. Never satisfied with his performance, but. The big question for him is, with his game translating is, I think he's an improved passer, but is he there yet? No. I mean, a lot of his passes were thrown to wide open receivers. But at the same time, he's able to find those targets, go through the progressions, use the checkdowns when he needs to. And he's a dynamic runner. He's a big physical guy, and that's really what he's known for right now. But Kyler Murray's showing that, or finding out that at the next level, you can't run away from some of these defensive ends. You can't run away from a guy like Myles Garrett. And Jalen Hurts would have to find that. He'll have to show that he can play within the pocket. I just don't know that there's a team, with a defense, maybe Texas, if they can get the injured players back for the Red River rivalry. But if not, then we may have to wait until the playoff, and hopefully Oklahoma does win the Big 12, because I want to see those matchups. I'd love to see Jalen Hurts get a crack at his former squad there at Alabama, and really get to see Jalen Hurts against that front and the linebackers, obviously in the secondary, with Diggs and McKinney and company. I think that's really where you're going to see where is Jalen Hurts. That'll be at the end of the season as well. So he's going to continue to progress in Lincoln Riley's offense. I mentioned CeeDee Lamb in the game that he had, 6'2", 189, 7 receptions, 185 yards, 3 touchdowns. That 71-yard strike was the longest catch of the game. But I'll tell you what, it was a catch over the middle, and basically just turned to the outside and just showed off some speed to go the distance. Another touchdown pass, ran a post, catches the ball over the middle, very strong after the catch, just kind of shrugged off the DB. He beat him, really at the catch point with, I want to make sure I get it right. Let's see, I think it was Dadrian Taylor. And shrugs him off, runs for another 42 yards for the score. Very sudden with his route running, and he's somebody who all he does is catch touchdowns. He's scored a touchdown in every single game this year. At one point, he had 14 receptions and 6 touchdowns. They were talking about that on the broadcast, and just staggering stuff with his play. T.J. Vasher, 6'6", 210 pounds there for Texas Tech. Really Texas Tech couldn't get a whole lot going offensively. They didn't have Alan Bowman, their quarterback. So Jet Duffy was the guy that really was the quarterback there. He showed off an ability to show some good downfield blocks, to spring receivers and spring some of the running backs. He did have one play where he showed some really good body control, got both feet in bounds, but couldn't sustain the ball, or couldn't really maintain possession of the catch all the way to the ground in the end zone. But definitely a good leaper, able to high point the football. Neville Gallimore there for OU. When you talk about defense and you talk about the impact that Alex Grinch has made, Neville Gallimore is somebody who up front, 6'2", 302, shows very good quickness off the ball, a quick arm over to beat the center, got into the backfield, chased down the quarterback after running through a running back block, chased him from the pocket, ultimately forced the Texas Tech Red Raiders to punt on that play. Really keeps working to the quarterback, shows excellent hands, chased down Jet Duffy 10 yards down the field to hit him, forced a fumble, and ultimately the linebacker Deshaun White picked up the play. Excellent effort. I think that's one of the things that you see this year out of this OU defense is the effort. Alex Grinch, they're definitely playing for him. And then Kenneth Murray, 6'2", 234-pound linebacker, 9 tackles and a sack on the game, showed excellent speed, getting after the quarterback. Here's the thing with Kenneth Murray, the gap integrity. That's really the big thing that I still am waiting to see him with consistency, but the athleticism is absolutely there. I think he's a guy who can definitely make plays at the linebacker position. You just want to see that consistency, and I think you're starting to see that come out more and more with Alex Grinch. And offensively, for the Sooners up front, Creed Humphrey showing the ability to anchor and knee bender as a former wrestler. He's 6'5", 316 pounds, only a redshirt sophomore. Tyler Biadasz came back for one more season there in Madison. I know that the Sooners would love to have Creed Humphrey come back, for one more year. But as a redshirt sophomore, if he does come out, he'll probably be a first-round pick. But all wasn't for naught for Texas Tech. I'll tell you what, the linebacker that was really playing well, Jordan Brooks, 6'1", 245, the middle linebacker, 35 tackles on the year, double-digit tackles in each of the games so far this year. It was blitzing off the edge, pressuring Jalen Hurts, forcing him out of the pocket, was chasing Jalen Hurts down. He was the guy that was making plays all over the field. So I thought Jordan Brooks really showed out well in a losing effort. That was one of the things that really you couldn't really question was the effort that was given there by the senior linebacker. Number 1 was really all over the field for them. Now, USC going down to the 17th ranked Washington Huskies. They're in Seattle, lost by 2 touchdowns, 24-10. Jacob Eason on the day. I'll tell you what, it was just 16-26, 180 yards, effortless delivery, big arm, easy to fit the football into tight windows. And USC, they were bringing pressure. Ball got quickly out of his hand to hit his tight end, Hunter Bryant. And that's the thing. The ball is on his receivers so quickly. And he fits the ball into such tight windows that arm strength is definitely something that is fun to watch. But here's the thing. We don't have a ton of film on Jacob Eason. He's somebody who is just in his first year with Chris Peterson. So I think Chris Peterson's even learning more about Eason. And if I were Jacob Eason, I think he's one of those quarterbacks to where let's come back for one more year, there with the Huskies. I think he's one of those guys who could be in consideration as one of the top quarterbacks in the 2021 draft. I think he and KJ Costello out of Stanford, those are 2 guys who I would love to see come back for one more year. Trey Adams, the Washington Husky tackle, 6'8", 314 pounds, battled an ACL back injury a season ago, decided to come back, and he still doesn't look to be all the way back just yet, but the physicality with which he plays is absolutely there. I think the lateral agility is coming. He's somebody who I think is continuing to get better each and every week. And he's someone, I think he'll probably be a day 2 pick. I think at one point people were talking about him being a first rounder. And I would say a couple of years ago, I would definitely agree with that. But, not right now, not with all the injuries. I don't know that I would necessarily put him in round 1, but I think he's definitely a day 2 guy. Now, I mentioned Hunter Bryant, the 6'2", 239-pound junior tight end. Not only was he an excellent receiver, but he was an excellent blocker. Blocking on the edge, clearing a path for the wide receiver Chico McClatcher on a reverse, getting to the edge for a big play. I'll tell you what, though, with him as a receiver, he was dominant out there against the smaller cornerbacks. He was somebody who was able to get off the line and then using that big body to shield them from the ball. He was really a big receiver at 6'2", 239, but he was lined up as a all over the field. He was lined up at fullback, at H-back, tight end. He was in the slot. He was split out to the outside, and he was really, when Jacob Eason was looking for a wide receiver or just a target in the passing game, Hunter Bryant was the guy. It really wasn't Aaron Fuller. It was more so Hunter Bryant than anything else. Aaron Fuller, a lot of people talk about him as a potential top 10 wideout. I just don't see it with this draft class. I think he'll probably end up being a day 3 pick. Probably 4th round would be my guess at this point. And then USC's Michael Pittman. Here's the thing with this guy. He's 6'4", 225 pounds. Showed excellent footwork along the sideline. Excellent blocking down the field for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that was one of the things that Jimmy Lake was doing, the defensive coordinator. He was taking away Michael Pittman and forcing Matt Fink, the Trojans' third-string quarterback, to look for other options. So Amon-Ra St. Brown was the underneath target, and a guy really working from the slot, very sudden with his route running ability. The sophomore was a main target early on, but Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator, really had to get creative to get the ball in Michael Pittman's hands, and ultimately later on in the game ran a go route, 44-yard touchdown, beat a true freshman on the outside. Got inside release, ran by the safety as well, and basically, like they said on the broadcast, if you're even, you're leaving, and he was gone, and tracks the ball well over his shoulder, and like I said, uses his big body, uses that frame very well. To me, I think Michael Pittman in this receiver class, he's so physical, so strong, and his ability to go up and make plays really makes him a guy that, to me, I think could end up being possibly a day 2 pick. Clemson, man, number 1 ranked Tigers. They fell to number 2 after this game because they were just a 2-point conversion away from losing to the Tar Heels. But Mac Brown and company, they ran an option play against Clemson into the boundary, and ultimately weren't able to get it done. And thought that was a little questionable, especially with all the team speed for Clemson. I mean, running up the middle, potentially a pass play, but that I thought that was a little odd. Maybe they thought they were going to catch the Tigers off guard. But in this game, I mentioned Isaiah Simmons, 10 tackles, a sack, 2.5 tackles for loss, a pass breakup. The length was evident. He did a really good job watching Sam Howell, spying him, getting his arm into passing lanes, able to rush the quarterback. Excellent as a tackler in the open field as well. I thought Isaiah Simmons really solidified himself as the top outside linebacker in this year's draft. I thought John Simpson, the 330-pound left guard, showed pretty good punch in his hands. AJ Terrell, the corner there for the Clemson Tigers was burned badly by De'Ami Brown. He was in bail technique and basically bit on a stutter and go, and Brown ran by him for the 40-yard touchdown, and basically, he had to turn and run, and by that point, he was giving up probably 2 to 3 steps, and was just burned badly. What's interesting though, you look at Trevor Lawrence. Everyone had him pegged as the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 draft. Kind of feels a lot like what happened with Sam Darnold and all the expectations. Trevor Lawrence, 18 to 30, 206 yards and a touchdown on the day. Wasn't quite himself. But I'll tell you what, T. Higgins had another big day, 6 receptions, 129 yards and a touchdown, using that big body to bail out his quarterback and help him out. Travis Etienne scored a touchdown, 14 carries, 67 yards. Not as explosive this season, not really getting a chance to explode. And you're just waiting for him to have that breakout game in 2019. I think Etienne is the home run hitter, but I think he's showing that there aren't as many tools in his tool belt. And so I think that may hurt his draft stock a little bit. He may actually, with the way that J.K. Dobbins has been playing, there's a chance that both DeAndre Swift and Dobbins could pass him up if he's not careful. I have this game recorded. I haven't actually watched it yet, but Montana took on UC Davis. So the number 4 ranked UC Davis Aggies in the FCS at home, taking on the Montana Grizzlies, who are ranked 18th. Grizzlies took it to them, 45-20. I want to watch the game to take a look at Dante Olson, the linebacker there for Montana. Volume tackler, had 8 tackles and an interception. Really want to see what this kid can do. He'll be a day 3 pick, probably be like a 4th or 5th round pick would be my guess. Just in what I've read of this kid, I haven't gotten to see him play yet. But if the stats and some of the notes that I've been reading up on him are any indication, I want to be able to see him for myself, and I'll talk about him next week. I'll make sure to watch the game in the next week and be able to bring some of that more to you. If we look at Notre Dame against Virginia, had a tough time there a little bit, but the 10th ranked Fighting Irish ultimately beating Virginia 35-20 on the season. Julian Okwara, a sack and 2 quarterback hurries. That's one of the things that you're going to expect out of him, is to get to the quarterback coming off the edge. And I think he's somebody who's coming on. Alohi Gilman, 3 tackles, a tackles for loss, and an interception to his credit. He's a safety who's continuing to make plays. He's the leader, in my opinion, in that secondary, the transfer from Navy. Those were guys that really stood out to me on the Notre Dame side. Charles Snowden, Jordan Mack, 2 linebackers that are kind of flying under everybody's radar. Let's talk about Charles Snowden a little bit. 6'7", 225 pounds on the year. He kind of does a little bit of everything, I'll tell you. As a junior, 31 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. He has 15.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks to his credit in his career, 10 pass breakups as well. He's one of those new age linebackers. He has excellent length as well. 6'7", 235 pounds, runs very well. He's somebody to keep an eye out for, as we progress throughout the season. Virginia suffered their first defeat, but I'll tell you what, they've got excellent linebacker play, and he's a big reason why. Jordan Mack, 6'2", 230 pounds. This is a guy who's showing an ability to get after the quarterback. 6 sacks on the year. That total has almost surpassed what he was able to do in his first 3 seasons. In the first 3 years, he had 7 sacks. He already has 6 sacks through 5 games. He's somebody to me that only played 9 games a season ago, but someone who, if he can start continuing with frequency getting after the quarterback, he's somebody who I think can start rising up some draft boards. And then finally, Bryce Hall. I mentioned all of the pass breakups a season ago, 21 to his name, 38 pass breakups, 5 interceptions. That's 43 passes defended in his career to this point. He's somebody, he's not seen a ton of passes thrown his way. Had just 4 tackles against Notre Dame, but somebody who I think is definitely one of the top cornerbacks in this draft. Auburn took it to Mississippi State, 56-23 winners there at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I mentioned Derrick Brown, a guy who just makes plays. And you look at, KJ Britt had 5 tackles, a sack, a couple of tackles for loss. Big reason why is big Derrick Brown. He had a chance to enter the draft a season ago, decided to come back for one more season, and he's definitely solidified himself, his draft stock as a top 10 pick, in my opinion. 2 tackles and a quarterback hurry, but look, he's somebody who affects every play. And like I mentioned, with the linebackers a season ago, he was the big reason why Deshaun Davis was making so many plays. It was because he was holding the point of attack, absorbing multiple blockers, getting, wreaking havoc in backfields. And he's somebody definitely to be on NFL radars, without a doubt. And this is a team as well. I mentioned Kylan Hill, over 600 yards on the ground, 17 carries, just 48 yards. Auburn, they're still figuring everything out with Bo Nix at quarterback. He actually had a really good outing, 16-21, 335 yards and 2 touchdowns. The freshman really, starting to get comfortable back there for the Tigers, but defensively, you've got Noah Igbenogany there in the secondary at the cornerback position. You've got Marlon Davidson there at defensive end. There are some players there that defensively, the Tigers are a team to be reckoned with there in the SEC. And let's see, one final game, Ohio State and Nebraska. Ohio State just put a whooping on Nebraska in this game, and I have to talk about Chase Young and Jeffrey Okudah once again. Chase Young, he was just playing with the offensive tackles. On one play, he would show a tremendous burst off the ball, a quick slap, of the offensive lineman's hand, that slap rip move, and turns the corner in a hurry, flattens out, gets to the quarterback. It's so impressive that he's able to flip those hips as he, that slap and rip move, and he's flipping his hips, flattens out in a hurry, and he gets to the quarterback in no time flat. I wish I had a stopwatch to really time just how quickly he was able to come off the ball and get to the quarterback and bring him down for a sack. But he does that on one play, and then the next you'll see that stutter to the outside, offensive tackle kind of oversets a little bit, and then he shoots back inside. Again, the hand usage, able to slap or use a rip move or an arm over and gets inside. He's flushing the quarterback, getting him outside the pocket. And, there was one play where he, the offensive tackle overset. He made an inside move, chased the quarterback off his mark, had him roll out, and ultimately led to a Jeffrey Okudah interception. Okudah was trailing the wide receiver coming in on an in route, and basically baited the quarterback, baited Adrian Martinez into making the throw, and it was so impressive to watch because he was just on his back hip, and the moment that the quarterback threw, once Martinez let go of the football, he makes his break on the ball, diving interception right in front of him, and then just another, I can't remember if it was the very next possession for the Cornhuskers or the one after that, but they get down into the red zone, and Martinez throws a pass that goes off of the receiver Wan'Dale Robinson's hands, and Jeffrey Okudah, covering another receiver, J.D. Spillman, slips down but happens to be in position right behind Wan'Dale Robinson, keeps his eyes on the football, and after that tip, he's slipping down and is able to haul in the interception. Just impressive stuff. And he was 8 yards off the ball and off coverage on a swing pass to the running back. No wasted movement, recognizes the play right off the bat, shoots downhill, able to drop him in the open field for no gain on a 3rd and 7 play. I thought it was definitely very impressive. Showed an ability to really be physical coming downhill. He's looking to jam you. He's going to get up. He's a physical guy in bump and run. And I think 6'1", 200 pounds. He's solidifying himself as the number 1 cornerback J.K. Dobbins had another efficient game, 5'10", 217-pound junior, 24 carries for 177 yards on the day. And what I have here, is patient. He sees the hole, puts his foot in the ground, decisive, no dancing at all, cuts up the field. He's a guy who's shooting for 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Would be the only Buckeye, with Archie Griffin to be able to do that. Very, like I said, patient. I keep looking at my notes. It just says patient. Jump cuts laterally, getting to the hole, coming off the guard's block. So he really follows his blocks very well. Head and shoulder fake on the edge in the open field, juke the safety. Cam Taylor Britt for extra yards as well. Met Mohamed Berry at the line, lowered his shoulder, ran through the linebacker's tackle as well. So it's showing an ability to be physical at the point of attack. Really wasn't a factor in the passing game here, but he's somebody who I think has shown that he can catch the football out of the backfield. Lamar Jackson really looked bad. The 6'3", 215-pound senior really looked bad on an out and up double move by Austin Mack. Bit on the out fake, and Mack was gone. Had Mack not lost his footing, he would have scored a touchdown. Ended up being a 38-yard gain. Ended up having 2 pass breakups on the day. He just, another guy who, with his aggressiveness, is biting on double moves, and that's something that teams can take advantage of. More often than not at the next level. KJ Hill showing an ability to catch balls, over the middle on a lot of the crossing routes. Reminds you a lot of Paris Campbell to that effect. And then Austin Mack, I mentioned the out and up route. Also ran a nice fade down the sideline, able to elevate over the cornerback, reach inside as he's elevating for the football on a nice 18-yard touchdown as well. So Austin Mack, 6'2", 215 pounds. He'll probably be a day 3 pick, but a guy who I think is starting to gain some momentum there for the Buckeyes. So those were all the games that I got to watch. What games do we have to expect here on week 6? If I'm taking a look at this, let's see. The Temple Owls head to East Carolina to take on the Pirates. They're on Thursday, which is tomorrow. I'm taping this on Wednesday night, so Thursday night's games will be tomorrow, Friday, October 4th. UCF taking on Cincinnati. I think UCF, Gabriel Davis is a big-bodied receiver. He was the other receiver that gave Paulson Adebo trouble, and really kind of exposed things. I think Gabriel Davis, big-bodied junior receiver, and somebody who I think could potentially enter the draft. He's right in there with a lot of these other big-bodied guys. I'm sorry, I think he's actually a sophomore. No, he's a junior. The sophomore, though, Sage Surratt there for Wake Forest is another guy, kind of fits that same mold, those big-bodied receivers who can get down the field. On Saturday, LSU taking on Utah State in Death Valley. The number 5 ranked Tigers. Tune in and watch this game. See what Jordan Love can do against that Tiger defense. If Jordan Love is going to enter this draft, if he's going to be in consideration as a top 5 quarterback for the draft, really needs to have a good game here against the vaunted LSU defense. Defensively for Utah State, they've got Tipa Nalei coming off the edge as an edge rusher. David Woodward at the linebacker position, a guy who I think is underrated, flying under radars. If he enters the draft, he's somebody who could, I think he'll probably come back for a senior season, but if he does enter the draft, somebody who I think could be a steal for a team, likely on day 3, but, I think he's an underrated prospect, a guy who can be a 3-down linebacker. OU traveling to Lawrence to take on the Mad Hatter and the Kansas Jayhawks. Jalen Hurts playing another team that he'll probably be done by the third quarter. As will Jonathan Taylor in Wisconsin taking on Kent State there in Madison. Let's see, Iowa hasn't, they outside of Iowa State, they haven't really been challenged much, but the 14th ranked Hawkeyes heading to the Big House to take on Michigan. Nate Stanley Can he be consistent as a passer? You'll get to see Tristan Wirfs going against some of the speed rushers there for Michigan. That ought to be an interesting contest. Oklahoma State taking on Texas Tech. Man, Texas Tech had to take on OU with Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb and company. Now they got to take care of that three-headed monster of Spencer Sanders at quarterback, Chuba Hubbard, the leading rusher, and one of the top 3 receivers in the country in terms of yardage in Tylan Wallace. I expect the 21st ranked Cowboys to have a field day there in Lubbock. Iowa State taking on TCU. Iowa State had trouble with Matt Rule's Baylor Bears going down last-second field goal. That will be an interesting contest there in the Big 12. Auburn heading to the Swamp to take on the Florida Gators. I expect Auburn to win that one. Texas, all the injuries there in the secondary, but I expect Sam Ehlinger to head to Morgantown and beat up on the West Virginia Mountaineers. Let's see, what else do we have? Illinois taking on Minnesota. Doesn't really sound like a game on the surface, but there's a transfer from USC there that's playing at Illinois, and Olawale Batiku, who's one of the top pass rushers in the country in terms of sacks and the sacks per game. He's leading the country, and a guy who didn't see the field a whole lot at SC, and then a season ago had a surgery that basically kept him off the field. But he'll be going up against the Gopher offense. It's led by the receiver Tyler Johnson, who I think needs to have some big games. I think he's kind of being overshadowed a little bit by Rashad Bateman. Had some drops to start out the season. In this wide receiver draft class, I think I'm really expecting to see him have a breakout game. He's going to need that. He's somebody who could be a day 2 pick, absolutely. But with this draft class, that's one of the things that I worry about a little bit. Can he be overshadowed? Georgia, number 3 ranked, Georgia Bulldogs, Jake Fromm and company heading to Neyland Stadium, taking on Tennessee. That ought to be an easy go for Uga and company. Ohio State will be hosting Michigan State. The Michigan State defense, obviously Raekwon Williams. Raekwon Davis plays for Alabama, but Raekwon Williams, they're at defensive tackle. Kenny Willekes at defensive end. Joe Bocci, middle linebacker. Those guys taking on Ohio State. Can they get Justin Fields off his mark? Can they get to J.K. Dobbins before he really gets going? Once he gets ahead of steam, he's difficult to stop. That passing attack really hasn't been challenged yet. That defense from Michigan State, what can they do there? And then can that offensive line, what can they do with Chase Young? That's really the biggest thing. You're going to, Chase Young, a lot of what he does, he'll flush the quarterback out of the pocket or force him to step up, and he just runs right into Malik Harrison or Pete Werner or Tuff Borland, any of those linebackers. And then that secondary is just so strong. Not only do you have the best corner in Jeffrey Okudah, but you have a sophomore in Sean Wade who has a chance to come out. And then you have, as your number 3 corner, Damon Arnett, who's a senior and could potentially be drafted early on day 3. Jordan Fuller at safety is going to be a draft prospect as well. Oregon will play host to Cal there at Autzen Stadium. The number 13 ranked Ducks, Justin Herbert taking on Evan Weaver. Oregon, one of the things that I saw when they played Stanford, Calvin Throckmorton, normally the right tackle. He's played 4 positions there for the Ducks. Was playing center, and I think it speaks more to Jake Hansen, missing him than anything else, because Stanford was able to run a lot of stunts up front. Casey Toohill, the linebacker, coming through, getting home to Justin Herbert quite a bit. They need Jake Hansen back in the lineup. Penei Sewell, though, at left tackle, he's healthy. And I'll tell you what, he's a guy who as long as, Walker Little doesn't enter the draft, I know he's battling the ACL and is out for the year for Stanford, But Penei Sewell and Walker Little could potentially be the top two offensive tackles for the 2021 draft. So light on his feet, big, physical. He's definitely a guy to watch there against Cal. Tulsa, a couple of linebackers there that are NFL prospects, and Cooper Edmiston, the middle linebacker, and then the sophomore Zaven Collins. They'll be taking on the 24th ranked SMU Mustangs. James Prosch, their receiver, can play both on the outside and in the slot. He's somebody who I think has excellent ball skills. Underrated wideout, a guy. Look, Trey Quinn of the Mustangs. He was Mr. Irrelevant, and he's actually making an impact there for the Redskins. So don't underestimate those Mustang receivers. That's where Cole Beasley went, by the way. And then Washington heading to the farm to take on Stanford. That's the late game. If you're in the Midwest, 9:30 start, 7:30 Pacific, 15th ranked Huskies. That'll be the battle of Jacob Eason and KJ Costello. And that'll be something. Can that Stanford defense? They affected Justin Herbert just a little bit there with the Ducks. 21-6 final. What's going to happen there? Can Stanford mount any type of an offense? And that's really been one of the, against Jimmy Lake. I just don't see that happening. I think Washington Huskies win that game and probably end up winning big. So that's what to look forward to here, week 6. If you tune in again next week, we'll go ahead and break down some of those games, all the games that I got to watch, and then we'll look ahead to week number 7. I hope everyone enjoys their weekend of college football, and we'll do this all again next week. For ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. And until next time, I am out of here. Take care.